Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of 3 Wide. I'm your host, Rodney Crawford. This week we're going to be going over all the action from Atlanta Motor Speedway, where Christian Eckes came away with his first victory for BMR Racing. Austin Hill gets another hometown victory, and Josh Williams puts his foot down against NASCAR. Also, we're going to go over the Cup Series race on Sunday, where Joey Logano gets the victory over his former teammate Brad Keselowski, and we're going to discuss RFK's impressive day and also look ahead at the upcoming weekend at COTA, all on this week's episode of 3 Wide. So this week's episode, I'm coming to you from Daytona Beach, Florida. I'm down here for some training in my 9-to-5 job, basically, and where we are stayed at, as I look out of my window, I got Daytona International Superspeedway right in my window. I'm looking at the front stretch grandstands, and I've never had a better view at any hotel I've ever stayed at before. This is pretty awesome to be this close to the home of the great American race, to see it on a non-race weekend and really be able to take it in. It's quite a sight. So a little bit different place I'm coming to you from with this week's show, but kicking off things, we're going to start out with the Cup Series race, where you had Joey Logano come through with a victory over his former teammate Brad Keselowski, who had quite a showing. Brad and RFK Racing, they were strong throughout most of the day. Him and Chris Buescher were up in the top 10. Buescher, unfortunately, was taken out in a crash, and it would have been interesting to see how the race would have turned out for Brad if he had his teammate out there. I'm not saying it would have made much of a difference, but you got to think that if Buescher was out there and was close, him and Brad would have been right there working together if able. And right there at the end on one of the last restarts before they made an incredible last 43, 44 laps of green flag racing, you had Logano up there with his two teammates behind him. So it would have been quite a show to have RFK versus Penske Racing, and what a bounce back for Ford. They had a strong weekend with both of these teams. Brad has completely even though he didn't get the win, this is kind of the full turnaround for this team. Last year, it was a struggle, especially in the first half of the season. Second half, you saw him get a little bit more consistent, a little bit stronger. Chris Buescher getting him victory lane at Bristol, and they have just come out firing off on all cylinders so far in 2023. Now, Brad has made this team look like it can get up there and get in the playoffs. They can go out and win a race, whether it's at a super speedway or could it be a non-super speedway track? Could it be a short track? Who knows? He's shown just as good a speed at the 1.5 miles as he has at the super speedways, which is really impressive that he's run as many laps as he had this year in the top 10. So, good showing for RFK Racing. I think we can expect even better things for them here in the next while for the rest of the season. But Joey Logano gets a huge win, locks himself into the playoffs, and I saw an interesting stat, I believe, where it said this was his first win without Shell Pennzoil being his main sponsor. Auto Trader was his main sponsor in this race. So interesting little tidbit there for that. But Logano had a solid day as well. He was much like the Truck and Xfinity race, which we'll go over here in just a minute. He was the strong guy at the beginning, had to work his way back up to the front. At one point, it fell out of the top 20, and it looked like it wasn't going to be as good an ending for Joey as it was at the beginning, but he bounced back. All three of his teammates had strong showings. Austin Cindric was able to get a stage win, had an excellent race for him as he's getting ready to go into the first road course race of the season. So he's got a little bit more confidence to him as we get ready to go into what is really his best style of racing. Christopher Bell had a strong race, but Corey LaJoie, he came in as someone to watch as a possible upset. They've had him and Spire Motorsports, as we've talked about on the show, they've had a decent season so far, scoring a bunch of top 20s out of the gate. Had a little bit of a rough finish last weekend, but this weekend he come out and instead of the normal, what we've seen from Corey and this team at super speedway style races, where they kind of, start towards the back and slowly work their way to the front, he was up in the top 10 for a good chunk of the day and was in perfect position to get that upset victory. Unfortunately, he didn't. He did have a solid top 5 finish, so it's a step in the right direction. Right now, he is in. If the playoffs started today, he would be in on points alone. I know we're only a handful of races into the season, and a lot is going to change between now and the end of the regular season. But for them to be, a handful of races into the season and you're still in the top 20, top 15 of points, for Spire Motorsports, that is a huge deal. And Corey and this team, they should get a ton of credit for as well as they have performed here early in 2023. Now, this race, you did have a couple of big wrecks. Some favorites were, taken out early, mainly Bubba Wallace, who spun out by himself coming out of turn 2. So his car, the lap before, really seemed unstable, sliding, coming out of turn 2. And the next lap, he lost it, making contact with the inside wall, ending what would have been a pretty solid day, I'm sure, for Bubba, because he is excellent at these super speedways. And his teammate Tyler Reddick looked like it was going to be a long day for him. He was under the weather at the beginning. They had John Hunter Nemechek there early in the garage, testing his fit in Tyler's seat. Tyler, I believe they said, had a stomach bug and just wanted John Hunter just in case he was needed for a substitute. Now, Tyler toughed it out and was very impressive. He comes away with another top 5 finish, and it just feels like he's just kind of sitting there simmering, just waiting to come to a bowl. And I think when he gets that first win with his 45 car, he is going to be a guy who gets hot and stays hot. As far as up there running in the top 2, competing for these wins, he could have become kind of the next Kyle Larson, in the essence of he's got this new start with the team, and I think can get, still get multiple wins this season, have a very impressive 2023 in that 45 car. So while it looked like it was going to be a pretty rough day for Tyler, he was able to make the most of it and get a solid top 5 finish, so hats off to him.
So before we get started on our next topic, let me tell you about our presenting sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. Now, as you've heard me say before, Hunt to Harvest is back with us for our second season here at 3 Wide. And if you are looking to update or upgrade your hunting apparel, then look no further than hunttoharvest.com, where you can check out their amazing selection of long sleeve and short sleeve shirts, as well as their selection of performance polos. Also, right now, they're having a mystery box special, and you can get 3 shirts chosen at random sent to you for $33. And at $11 a shirt for this kind of high quality product, you cannot find this kind of deal anywhere else. So head on over to hunttoharvest.com, click on that mystery box option at the top of the page, select your size, and when you go to checkout, be sure to enter that promo code RADNEY18923. That's RADNEY 18923, where you can get 3 of the most comfortable shirts you will ever put on sent directly to you. And that's at hunttoharvest.com.
So this week I was fortunate enough to be able to go to the doubleheader on Saturday with a couple of friends, the truck race and the Xfinity Series. This was my first race since 2007. First time going back to Atlanta since 2002, so a lot has changed since then, and I had a fantastic time. My friends had a great time, and if you're looking to go to a race, real family-friendly atmosphere, I highly suggest Atlanta Motor Speedway. It's a great track to go to, excellent seating. I would highly recommend the reserve parking. I got the reserve parking for this race and was able to park right there at the gate we came out of. All in all, it was a great experience. On the truck race, this was my first ever truck race going to, and it was a great race to watch. You had Christian Eckes really start off the race hot, won stage 1. Due to some pit strategy, he had to start in the back in stage 2 and work his way back forward, which he ultimately did. He came away with the victory, a huge win, his first one with BMR. And Christian has shown a lot of speed here at the beginning of this truck season. Looks to be a guy who I think could be a consistent contender against Zane Smith. I still think Zane is the top dog in the truck series. Week in and week out, he's a contender. But this race wasn't really all that messy like I was expecting it to be and like we're used to seeing truck races become. They did have their share of crashes and incidents. You had Corey Heim, the defending winner. He had a rough day after looking solid. He had made some contact with the 9 truck on pit road, spun him out, caused him some damage, put him towards the back, and then was caught up in an accident which tore up the front of his car and ended his day. So the defending race winner, unable to really get a true shot at defending that. But, Christian, he made a excellent run there at the end, especially on the overtime. And going into the Xfinity race and the Truck Series race, that both drivers in both series were really not very complimentary of the new Atlanta. That was kind of the theme over the race weekend, especially with drivers complaining about the track, the way the racing is now. But before I get into all that, on the Xfinity Series side of things, it started out really rough. In the first two stages of this race, you had a lot of cautions, especially a major crash in between turns 3 and 4. A lot of fluid was spilled. It took NASCAR a long time to clean this accident up. And I think, 40 laps was the first stage, and at 30 laps in, I think they'd only run 7 green flag laps compared to 23 caution laps, and it was a big-time drag in that first stage. Second stage wasn't a whole lot better. They ran a few more laps under green, but still, it seemed like in the first part of the race, before they could really get going good, have some excellent green flag racing, somebody was getting up into the wall, or there was a multi-car crash going on. It was just a mess. Now, the final stage really made up for it. We saw some great racing. Austin Hill, kind of like Christian earlier in the day in the truck race, had a dominant first stage, which kind of couldn't help but have one with as many cautions as there were, and him in the lead. But his teammate Sheldon Creed made some great moves on the final lap of the first stage, and in the final corner was able to get to the outside of him and win the first stage. Now, Sheldon, unfortunately, he had a issue with his tire. His tire went flat. He had to come to pit road, and that kind of took him out of the running. But it was a solid day for both RCR drivers. Austin, after the pit strategy was kind of flipped, much like the truck race in between the first and second stages, had to work his way back up. And I got to tell you, it was incredible to sit there and watch Austin in person, how he attacks this type of racing, the moves he was making to get back up in the lead. He was not content with, just simply racing, trying to get some stage points, getting in the top 10. He was going for the lead. Every time he had an opening, he was taking it. And we had scanners tuned into his radio and hearing him and his spotter communicate back and forth. I mean, his spotter did a phenomenal job. Off the top of my head, I honestly cannot remember who his spotter is, but shout out to him, because that is a key part to Austin's success at these super speedway style tracks, I believe. Austin was getting a ton of great information, where the runs were coming, who was where, who was behind them. It was great to watch, and it shows with his aggressiveness and the amazing spotter he has, why he is so successful at these types of tracks. A lot of drivers go into these super speedway style races dreading it, not really looking forward to it, and just kind of don't go out there with full aggression like Austin does. And Austin, I don't know whether he loves it, hates it, or is indifferent about super speedway racing, but he has fully embraced it, and you can see that on the track, whether you're in person or on TV, watching on TV. And that's to me what separates him from the rest of these guys. That's why he is going to be the guy to beat week in and week out. He embraces the aggressiveness you have to have on these tracks and goes for it. I mean, he is pedal to the metal from the get-go. So Austin, he's going to be a guy to watch, of course, on the remaining super speedway style races throughout the rest of the season. He's already got a win earlier this year at Las Vegas, so we know he can win on non-super speedway tracks. He could be looking at a very impressive run to the playoffs and a deep run into the playoffs, going for his first championship. And if or when he gets up in the Cup Series, he's going to be a guy to watch from day one at the Daytona 500 with this style of driving that he does. But going back to drivers complaining about this style of racing, or at least the way NASCAR and Atlanta, the way they've redone the track. Drivers that were outspoken about it were Corey Haim, Justin Allgaier. Off the top of my head, Allgaier was very outspoken about it after his crash in the Xfinity race, taking him out of it. And used to, Atlanta was the old Atlanta was very strong for Justin. It was one of his better tracks. These drivers are coming out saying that they've ruined the racing at Atlanta. It isn't what it was. Just completely going out against it. And Ryan Vargas, he tweeted out Sunday a take on it, which is where I stand. I agree with what he put up 100%, where he says that The new Atlanta isn't that bad. It was either repave it and enjoy 10 to 15 years of straight up boring racing, or try something out of the box. They understandably chose the latter. Only other option was to do what Fontana is doing. This is coming from an old Atlanta lover. He said, personally, to get the speedway, racing they want or need, we need to drop some horsepower. Trucks are very close to perfect. Xfinity needs a bigger blade and splitter. In my honest opinion, the cars are too unstable, and Cup Series at the moment has it right. And this was a spot-on take by Ryan, because if NASCAR had just simply done a repave of this track, which was in the discussions, we know how repaves go on these tracks. It's going to create boring racing until the track surface wears out and gets back to what it was, which who knows how long it will take. I don't think in Atlanta it would take 10 to 15 years, because we're already seeing the surface wear out in just year 2 of this racing. The weather down here in the South and in Georgia is very unstable. You know, like Saturday, here we are getting ready for the first day of spring, and we were freezing up there in the stands. So the track surface, I think, more like between 5 and 10 years. But then fans would just be simply complaining about the boring racing because of the repave and how they never should have touched the old surface, even though they kind of had no choice. So instead, NASCAR has went this route with a super speedway style racing. Who knows how the racing will be effective as the surface gets more and more wore out. Maybe we'll get to more old style racing. I'm not sure. But it's worth the gamble. It's creating some exciting racing. It's creating drama. And I can't really argue with it. Like I said, and watching the races in person, Ryan is right. The Truck Series are pretty close to perfect. It was a very good race by the Truck Series. Xfinity Series cars, they did seem too unstable. These guys are getting really out of shape in and out of the corners with the speeds they're running. And the Cup Series, I believe, is spot on with what they have. So what the future holds for Atlanta, I'm not sure in terms of style of racing. But to complain just for the sake of complaining isn't going to help the sport. This is good racing I feel like we have on the schedule at Atlanta right now. I think it will get better as the track surface gets wore out. And, you know, like, I think some people just are wanting to complain just to complain, because even fans were complaining about drivers getting up and doing the freight train, running the top of the track at points in the Xfinity race, when that has been the MO for most super speedway races for decades, where these guys, they just want to make it to the end, so they're going to get up on the top in a single file line and just run it to the end, whether it's the end of the stage or the end of the race, you know, whichever is first. So just take a step back. The racing is good while we have it. Let's not bash the racing and NASCAR and the cars at every single corner. I mean, there's plenty of things to be upset about. I don't feel like this is one of them. And speaking of things to be upset about, the big news of the doubleheader race Sunday was Josh Williams, who in Saturday's Xfinity race, I don't really understand the full story. From the way I take it, looks like he had been in an accident, and right after they went green, he had been on pit road. His team had tried to repair it. Some debris dropped from his car. And NASCAR made the decision telling him to go park it in the garage. I don't know if they weren't satisfied with the effort that his team took to clean up the car, to try and get the car fixed, or if they think they didn't fix it properly so they could get a debris caution to get more time to work on it. I'm not sure. But NASCAR made the decision to park it, which is really kind of random, because we haven't really seen that before. And you know, with cars being damaged, and all of a sudden NASCAR tells them to park it unless they're not running minimum speed. Well, Josh Williams parked it all right. He went and parked it right in front of where we were sitting on the start-finish line. And us fans in the stands, it was really, nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew if something went wrong with his car until he went to climb out and simply waved at the flag stand, got out the car, and started walking across the track, throwing up another wave to the people up in the booth. And when he got to pit road, He was met by officials. Fans at first were booing from the crowd. I don't know if they thought he was kind of making a butt of himself and trying to send a message. But then, as you could hear over the speakers from the radio broadcast of what was going on, those boos became cheers. People were like, couldn't believe what they were seeing. It had become this great moment of a driver putting his foot down and disagreeing with NASCAR's call in an epic way. And so NASCAR officials scooped him up. He wasn't able to make an interview with TV. They said they were going to take him to the infield care center. Whether he made it there or not, I was not sure of. I'd seen reports that they had said, never mind, you're going to go wait in the hauler they did take him to the care center, and then they took him to the hauler. But when he did get to the hauler, they did tell him basically he's going to sit there until the end of the race because they have a race to call, and he could just hang tight. Which to me seems kind of like a power move by NASCAR. They had been shown up by this driver, and they weren't fans of it. So they were going to make a show out of him. But I think all that did was just kind of galvanize the support of Josh Williams. Here you have Josh Williams and this small team, standing up against NASCAR and disagreeing with a call and just saying, nope, we're not going to have it. And Josh Williams sponsors have come and supported him. I saw where his Twitter followers have doubled to now over 24,000 people. He has got shirts left and right. I'm sure just selling a ton of merchandise. So an excellent piece of marketing by Josh to turn this negative into a positive, because he has been suspended for one race. He will not be at COTA this weekend. And so he has definitely turned into a positive, and I guarantee you when he is back at the track after COTA, he's going to get the loudest cheers out of the whole field during driver intros. He has put himself in the spotlight, and that's pretty impressive for a driver in a smaller team to be able to do this and turn this into such a positive. So you got to take your hat off to Josh. He is a good driver. He's one of those drivers who's just never had the equipment in the top levels of NASCAR to show what he has. But here he's getting a chance to, kind of put himself on the map, and we'll see where it goes from here. It's going to be interesting to watch. But all in all, it was an exciting weekend from Atlanta. I definitely will be planning to go back next year. I hope to go to the Cup Series race, but still the ultimate dream is one day to be able to get on the other side of the fence and be on the media side of things for these races. So time will tell if I make it there, but all in all, it was a good weekend to enjoy some racing. So now we get ready for the upcoming race weekend at COTA. This is the first road course race of the season. And thankfully, we finally get to see a straight-through race, no stage breaks. This will be the first race that NASCAR will not take caution laps after the end of each stage. They will keep the race going. So it's going to be interesting to see how that changes the race for all three series. The Truck Series, this could be a huge change for them, as they really haven't had to worry about green flag pit stops for a while, at least on a consistent basis. How will this affect the running order? Time will tell. Zane Smith is coming into this race as the defending winner, and as strong as he's still running, I don't see that really changing, and that can be said week in and week out. Now, last year behind him in the running order, most of the guys are gone, like John Hunter Nemechek, Chandler Smith, Kyle Busch. I can't remember if Kyle is going to be in this weekend's race, but he finished third last year. But Christian Eckes and Tyler Ankrum are going to be the ones to watch. Christian finished sixth, Ankrum seventh last year. Eckes coming off this huge win in Atlanta. This team's going to be feeling confident. Now that they've broken through the glass ceiling and got that first win, now what can they do? Can they go out and set the world on fire and become the top team to compete against Zane for the championship? Also, Carson Hocevar. Carson has had kind of a disruptive year. He hadn't had the best season. This will be a good chance for him to come out and just get a good solid finish. He finished in the top 10 here last year. So he's got to be looking to at least repeat that and come away with a good solid finish. Now on the Xfinity Series side, A.J. Allmendinger, the defending race winner of this race, he is out in the Cup Series, but Austin Hill finished second last year, Cole Custer in third. Cole, with the finish he had here last year in the 07 car, has got to have this race really circled. Besides the race earlier this year at Auto Club. Cole's hadn't kind of like Hocevar in a way. He hadn't come out and been as dominant as I think everyone thought he would be this early in the season, but this will be a good chance for him to turn that around. Also, a driver like Brett Moffitt, who had such an impressive run in that 25 car this past week at Atlanta and has been pretty strong in this first-year team in the Xfinity Series so far this season. Can he continue it and have another solid top 10 run here at COTA like he did last year? Also, on the Cup Series last year, we had Ross Chastain get his first career win, kind of in controversial fashion over AJ Allmendinger. They had made some contact there a couple times on the last lap. Alex Bowman nearly snuck through and got the win. Will any of those three guys be competitive and be up there contending for the win? AJ, I think you'd be a fool to sleep on him. He is the best road racer in NASCAR right now, I believe. Behind him, Austin Cindric. He's a solid road racer. I wouldn't be surprised to see him up there mixing it up. Can Ross Chastain, can he repeat from last season's win and get another victory at COTA? Alex Bowman, will he be able to bust through? It's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. All we really have to go off of as far as previous races is just last year. The year before that at COTA was really a mess. And so there's just not a whole lot, to go off of as far as results or who could be the ones to watch. I just think this is going to be a chance for AJ to get that win and have a shot at locking himself into the playoffs early. With all these road courses on the schedule, he's going to be a threat and a guy to go out there and watch. Michael McDowell, he has a chance. He's a solid road racer as well. Can he go out there and have a top 10 and possibly get up there in the top 5 and get a sniff of the win? Who knows? This is going to be a fun race to watch. I'm a huge fan of COTA being on our schedule. I hate Road America's gone, but I'm glad we still have COTA, and I think it's going to put on an excellent race, and it's going to be something to watch this weekend, especially now that we have taken away those stage breaks. And that'll wrap up this week's episode of 3 Wide. As always, thank you for joining me and listening along. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this podcast from. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and many others. Also, head on over to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button there so you stay up to date on whenever our new videos drop. And as I said, hope everyone has a wonderful week, and we will meet back same time next week and go over all the action from the first road course race of the season at the Circuit of the Americas.